Hello, everyone, and welcome to Music Biz Live. I'm Portia Sabin, the president of the Music Business Association. We've been doing these Zoom sessions for the past 5 weeks, but as I've mentioned so far this week is special because it would have been the original Music Biz 2020 conference, which means we would all be together at the JW Marriott instead of sitting in our homes in our night pants talking to each other on a video. We wanted to commemorate these dates with special keynote level interviews, and today I'm thrilled to present a conversation with Troy Carter, Jay Erving, and Suzy Ryoo of Q&A and Human Resources. But first, I wanted to acknowledge all of our presenting partners and thank them so much for helping to get the word out about these sessions. I'd especially like to thank all of our sponsors, and I'm excited to be able to shine a spotlight on one sponsor today, Jaxsta. So now I'd like to welcome my friend, Jackie Louis-Schurl, the CEO of Jaxsta, to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. Really thrilled to be here today and really wanted to thank the whole Music Biz team, Portia, Nick, Nicole, and JJ for making Music Biz continue because we should all be in Nashville today. But really thrilled that this Music Biz Live series is running. I wanted to just give you a little bit of an update on Jaxsta and what we are. So first thing I wanted to ask is, were you aware that Herbie Hancock, for example, played piano on Bonnie Raitt's Nick of Time? I actually found this out last week, which was kind of mind-blowing to me. So what we've built at Jaxsta is it's a very rich database of music credits. Who played what and who played which instrument, who are the songwriters, who are the performers. It's the soft metadata and the informative metadata that makes up the information of who worked on a release. It's really crucial as an industry that we get this metadata right and that we showcase and highlight the people who participated in a release. So if you think of the album jacket that comes with a release, it had all of the rich metadata of who played what on a particular track. And we've captured all of that information. So some key stats, we have over 105 million individual credits for entities. So that could be songwriter, producer, a session musician, a mixing engineer. We have over 105 individual million credits across 42 million pages, which if you compare to Wikipedia's 6.5 million English pages, it's substantial. It would take you 23 years, to review every single page on Jaxsta, spending only 10 seconds per page. And we have credits for over 27 million unique recordings. And we're getting new releases every day. 100,000 new credits are being ingested into our platform. There are 3 flavors of Jaxsta, if you will. There's a public-facing interface, which I'm showing you now, which is like the IMDb for music, where you can search any individual, or as I've showed you moments ago, Bruce White. He's a viola player who has over 2,000 credits in Jaxsta, and you can type it in page search to see just who he's worked with. It's everyone from George Michael to Rag and Bone Man to Florence and the Machine, the late great Amy Winehouse. But over 105 million of these credits exist. We also have Jaxsta Pro. Jaxsta Pro was launched at the end of last year, and we are giving it away to the industry till at least the end of this year. It was previously $150 per month plus tax. And it is, if you will, like the LinkedIn for the music industry. You can come into Jaxsta and actually claim a profile. And whilst you're in here, you have the ability to edit key information. So that could include your bio, it could include your profile image, it can include your key links, so people can see what you've recorded and listen to it on Spotify or Deezer or Apple, for example, and the key contacts of your team, which you control the conversation. You can add as much or as little information into your contacts as you want. The other thing that you can do too as a creative, which is kind of exciting, is to highlight your feature catalog. What are the key releases, that you've worked on that you want to highlight to the industry and to fans of music? You simply pin the piece of artwork that you want, and then you can drag and drop it to any position that you want it to be in a feature catalog. And if for any reason you want to remove it, it can be easily done, and it all happens in real time. So what this portal does is it's a very version of LinkedIn for the music industry. You can showcase your credits, you have the contacts of your team so people can reach out to you and collaborate as they choose. The third part of Jaxter is that we are building a commercial API and bespoke data solutions. So we have our public-facing site, Jaxter Pro, and a commercial API. There are other parts to Jaxter Pro for the industry. You can look at the charts section. We have charts from Spotify, Apple, the official charts company in the UK, Shazam, Aria Air, and we're ingesting new charts all the time. You also have the ability to set bespoke chart alerts. So you could go into any individual, you could go into any particular release and set a chart alert. And it's the first time in the business that you can set a chart alert for an engineer, a composer, someone who clapped on the track, the record label. And you can track all of your chart alerts and see every day how people that you want to follow or that you're working with are charting. We also have a detailed markets section. We have the top 20 markets as decreed by IFPI, and you can drill down into any market and get more in-depth information. How many households have broadband, smartphones, the population of that nation, the GDP, and then you can click on the directory and drill down even further and get information on that market. And then last but not least, in Pro, we have an events calendar. Now, obviously, at the moment, it's a deeply challenging time with most things being cancelled or rescheduled, but we've started adding in all of the virtual events as they're being announced. So it's a really detailed product. Unlike other services that can exist, we don't take any crowdsourced information. And it's not a space where people can submit their own information. We only deal with verified credits. And this is for a very specific reason. The rights owners who deliver the data to us are the custodians of that data, and we don't want to be out of sync with what they send us. If you're missing a credit, you can easily add a feedback ticket, and then we help close the loop by resolving the query with the label or the partner of the data. And we're keen to accept data from anybody that wants to work with us. There's much more to Jaxter, but I just wanted to give you a top line overview, and again, thank Portia and the team for this incredible series. I'm sad we're not in Nashville at the moment, but looking forward to speaking soon.
Thank you, Jackie. It's great to hear your voice and see your face for 5 seconds. Yay. That was awesome. All right, so just before we get the show on the road, a little bit of housekeeping. Everybody knows that please introduce yourself in the chat box, put in your contact information. It's been a great place for people to network and meet each other over the last few weeks. If you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A box. We may not get to it. I'm sorry in advance if we don't. We just have to see how the flow of the conversation goes. So with that, let me please introduce my awesome guests, Troy Carter, Jay Erving, and Suzy Ryoo. Hi guys, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Portia.
Good to see you.
By the way, already impressed with how you guys are running these panels. It's way more official and nice with the sponsor and everything than ours.
Well, but yours are the inspiration, Suzy. The panel that you guys have been doing for the last few weeks has been so amazing. I think you've inspired like 20 different people to do an online series, just because the quality of people you've had on and just the high level discussion. It's so nice. I think our industry, we really thrive from connection and collaboration and talking to each other. And I think that's one of the reasons this has been tough, this period of time for us, because we're all separated. But I think that sort of puts us in a perfect place, because I know Troy, you and Jay have worked together before, years ago. But what was the inspiration for you guys to all come back together at this time to start Q&A at this moment?
I think it was pretty inevitable. For those who know, Jay and I have been friends since, pretty much our childhood days, and go all the way back to Philly. And And when I went into Spotify, human resources was actually one of the first distro deals direct deals that we put together. I think we put together 4 of them, and Jay was the first one. And then when I left, and Suzy and I were kind of talking around this idea around Q&A. First phone call that was made was to Jay, and sort of putting the band back together. So I think it's just pretty natural fit.
I feel like we've been having this conversation this whole week. So the first day on Monday, we talked to the 2 global co-heads of music for Spotify. And then tomorrow we're going to talk to Tom and Aaron, who are co-heads of Warner Records. I feel like there's this trend in the music industry right now of collaboration and people seeing the worth of having other people's input. Do you guys feel that is true too?
Yeah, I think for me it's certainly super helpful, right? Troy is a visionary and has always been since we were young. Is like, I'm going to be president one day, and has always had a vision beyond where the rest of us currently sat. And Suzy has been, I just kind of do what Suzy tells me to do, and she's got so much structure and kind of real, structure really to our business and what we were previously building on the human resources side, and just her relationships are so valuable and in so many different areas. So it's been great to collaborate with our partners.
And Suzy, you were just willing to jump in and start telling everybody what to do, basically.
Well, it's coming up on my 5-year anniversary of joining Troy and Jay over at Atom Factory, and technically that was my introduction into the music industry. And Troy, when we met, he kind of saw something in me and plucked me out of media and brands and said, "Hey, like, would you like to come join and lead tech partnerships, lead early stage investing alongside me at Atom Factory?" And I've always been in love with culture and entertainment and education, and like, there's no better industry than music to be able to carry those values and spread that like global knowledge and culture. And I thought it would be an incredible journey. And now we're here like 5 years later, and we've invested in hundreds of companies. We've managed and been a label partner for artists. We started this company. Troy's been inside Spotify and helped lead that company to an IPO. So it's just been like a wild adventure. And when like every year gets better and changes, and that the only thing that's constant is change. But when you have wonderful partners and a wonderful team around you, you're excited to go at it together. That's just been the journey of my 5 years.
Honestly, I think it's really interesting because the music business, I think, was, we have a strange history, many ups and downs. But one thing I'd say is in the last 10 years, like ever since the major digital revolution occurred, we made the big move from physical to digital. I feel like it's been this crazy, constantly changing landscape. And I feel like a company like yours is really new in that you welcome the changes, right? Changes are an opportunity rather than, my God, we have to go back and hold on to this one little thing because that's the only way we ever knew how to do, So I feel like your company is one of the flagship companies that's really showing people that changes are opportunities and not things to get scared about.
Thank you. And we're only 18 months in, and human resources has been around for 2.5 years, so we're still incredibly young. And I think that our perspective is that we have to look at change as an opportunity and skate to where the puck is going, as opposed to protect what was the past. And I'm learning every day from Troy and Jay, who have always been entrepreneurs, who have had always had their backs to the wall and create something from nothing. Whereas, I think like in today's generation, like people are also like happy to have things handed to them. And I think like as we start this company, and as we get this company going, like we're every day, the mindset is, all right, our existence and our survival and our success is not guaranteed. Like we have to work as hard as humanly possible while still, you know, maintaining our quality of life and our balance and our health and our mental health. But that, you know, how can we enable a culture within our team that really thinks about like how we win every single day and not take our success or our names or our pasts for granted. It's all about today and the micro wins.
And I think like that with the music industry too, we, you know, we're incredibly resilient, like, you know, so, like just through all these different ways of technology, you know, we've always figured out a way to survive, because I do think by nature, the people who built the music industry and the people who come into the music industry are just scrappy, you know, so it's not, you know, filled with like Ivy Leaguers as much as it is, you know, people who just fell in love with music and would do whatever they needed to do to sort of help artists accomplish their goals or whatever else. You know, I think one of the issues though has been innovation has always been driven from outside forces who end up with control over the content and over the relationship with fans essentially. So so that's the part, you know, just as we're building this company, you know, as insiders from the music industry who also understand the role of technology and also what it takes to actually build product. That's the part that we're most excited about, is sort of finally really being able to build from the inside out. So where it's not just about us per se, but, you know, how are we helping the rest of the community within the music industry, but also being able to retain the value within the music industry as well.
I think, you know, we talk a lot in the industry about artist empowerment, right? And helping artists to, you know, own their own masters, let's say, or whatever it is. And I think that that is super critical, and also like a real thing that we're seeing right now, you know, the rise of the power of managers, or, you know, you don't necessarily need a record label per se, but you do need a team, you know, people who are going to help you figure out how to navigate your career. But I think, you know, I want to ask you guys specifically, because in my role, I ran a record label for 13 years. I found myself constantly having to educate artists on why they need to be empowered. Do you know what I mean? So it's not just, you know, it sounds real easy, like, oh yeah, just let's empower artists. But not every artist understands how, you know, the opportunity that they have to be a brand, to take control of everything that they actually do produce. You know, and I think that that is an education process, and that's where the, you know, the problems slip in, like, you know, somebody who might come in and take stuff from an artist, you know, or not tell them the full picture. So can you talk a little bit about your process of educating artists of, you know, how to take their own power?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. I think on the human resources side, what we're learning is that artists are understanding that more now than they ever have. You know, the power that they have, the access that they have, the ability to, you know, independently break records and, you know, become superstars. And, you know, we over the last 2.5 years, like when I started human resources, I felt like there was an opportunity for disruption in the distribution space. And you know, that some of the, you know, distribution companies that were out there were kind of transactional. It's kind of like, we'll take your record from here and we'll put it here, and, you know, you guys kind of figure out the rest. And we wanted to, you know, build a team that could provide, you know, quasi-label services for artists in a distribution deal structure. But when we first took this out, you know, when I'm, you know, going into my, you know, experience as a manager and pitching things that we had done in the past, and, you know, artists are, and initially, like, I was still calling what we were doing a record label. And, you know, every time I would say label, like artists would look at me kind of funny. And then like, you know, I learned kind of like how they want to, you know, one of the things that we preach is really truly listening to young people, and like for real, and you know, taking in what is important to them, how, you know, their kind of vision for their, you know, their music and their creative and their careers, and helping, you know, be more like, you know, guardrails versus, you know, driving the car. And we're like, you know, you're going a little too far this way, a little too far that way. But, you know, a lot of it is them. And you know, so I feel like today's artists and, you know, these young artists are, you know, have a lot more understanding of their value, of ownership, of, you know, wanting to own their masters. I think it's become cool to, you know, and it's become a thing. Like when we were coming up, all we wanted to do was get a record deal, and whatever it meant giving up to get a record deal, we give it up, you know. And but I think the young artists these days, and young managers are more savvy than they ever have been.
Well, I think, you know, it's funny, when I was talking to Chris yesterday, he said the same thing, because he and I were both in bands when we were, you know, younger. And, you know, in those days, like in the late 90s, there was no access to the marketplace for a person in a band, right? I mean, we could put out our own tapes, we could, you know, plaster posters all over the place, we could play shows, but we didn't have any actual access to the marketplace. So this all consuming, like, get a record deal thing became the end all be all. And, you know, sometimes it's hard for things to change. So it took a little while, I think, for that narrative to kind of fall by the wayside. And I think it still exists a lot. You know, people are like, ooh, if we just get a record deal. But the truth is, you can produce something in your home and you can put it on Spotify tomorrow. And guess what? You're in the marketplace. So it's just, access is completely different nowadays. How do you help your artists navigate that?
Yeah, I think one of the issues though, like where I think a couple of problems still need to be solved before we hit that tipping point, you know. And I think you know, as an industry, I think everybody's kind of been looking at, when does the sort of value proposition of big record labels, you know, when does the bottom fall out, right? And then and and this sort of artist empowerment movement. But we haven't seen global superstars built out of DIY yet, essentially. And but because I think what's taken for granted is it's still a gatekeeper system. So as much as the tools have been democratized, when you look at the playlist across multiple platforms, my guess would be in the major playlists, 99.9% of the content would still come from major labels, essentially. So if I'm an artist sitting at home, and then so that's one issue, right? So you think about radio, what radio plays, you think about major playlists throughout the playlist ecosystem, and then think about access to capital. And because capital hasn't been democratized or made easy yet, that's still a big piece of it as well. And so when you couple all three of those with the expertise that major labels still have in terms of being able to have the boots on the ground and infrastructure around the world, and also domain expertise when it comes to, you know, some types of music or whatever, it still becomes a more attractive value proposition to an artist that's sitting at home with no money, wants to be famous, is like, I want to go the way of Billie Eilish, or I want to go the way of Drake. You know, so I think that becomes the true north. And until there's a independent Billie Eilish, or that did it, you know, completely on their own, or a Drake that's the same way, it doesn't really give the artists at home the higher aspirations to shoot after.
Definitely. That's absolutely true. I kind of want to bring Suzy in on that because I know, Suzy, you've done a lot of investing in the last few years, and that's part of your expertise. What do you guys think? I mean, just totally spitballing about the potential for that kind of, access to capital for artists in the upcoming marketplace. I mean, do you think that that's a possible reality?
I do think it's going to be a possible reality, and that there are existing teams now, whether they're entrepreneurs or specialty asset management firms, like looking into solutions that are both manual as well as technology enabled on behalf of artists as well as managers and independent labels. Like one that comes to mind is a stealth company that I won't say the name of, but it's a longstanding music executive that was a former McKinsey grad that saw the opportunity in taking the data from streams and allowing artists to request to have a percentage of their royalties based on the algorithmic understanding of the streams past, present, and future, to give a portion of those streams in order to receive an advance, and structured as a loan. Companies like 23 Capital or STEM, Advanced Capital, working on solutions to enable these things. And I think
the solutions can't be payday loans where they pay, where people are paying 20% on, and like a lot of those solutions are sort of masked as payday loans, and it might be a better option than the label in terms of what you give up, but what you pay on that money that's already yours is a lot of money. So it's almost like saying, okay, do you want to be shot in the leg or shot in the chest? You know what I'm saying? Of course,
100%. And I think it's gonna,
right?
definitely, and it's like going to be an iterative process to get to the place where it's actually a solution that's 100% great and beneficial to the artist. I think like it's a kind of band-aid solution that is kind of yet to be figured out and solved, but it's an iteration on the model of, all right, the label is gonna own my masters for 5 albums and for 20 years, and I'm never gonna be able to earn the royalties against the advance that I took. And that's just like a sinking ship and an old model, but it's the model that has been the incumbent and will continue to be seen on an everyday basis, especially even from new labels that come about. Like if you look at like the whole Megan Thee Stallion debacle, and how the label that she partnered up with and the terms that she didn't really realize she was getting into when she was young. I think that probably happens on a everyday basis to hundreds of artists around the world. So there will be interim solutions that get us to better solutions, but we're not quite there yet.
I feel like we have a problem in this industry in terms of just, like, I don't know what the right word is for this, but it's like we have a culture of not wanting to see how the sausage is made. Do you know what I mean? Like it takes the bloom off the rose if we understand how the music industry works. Music industry is quite complex, to be honest. I mean, we are. The patchwork of rights management, like understanding rights management is like, that's a whole, semester of school to try to understand that. And it's sexy to be an artist, right? I mean, it's fun. It's enjoyable to play in a band. I loved it. I played in bands for 10 years. But it takes a little bit of the shine off if you know all the details, I think, for people. And so how do you navigate that when you're talking to artists? Because it's like you want them to understand the complexities, but you don't want them to get so bummed out by the realities of the business that they're like, ugh, I can't handle this.
For us, is like transparency is key for us, and we're doing fair deals. So I think the business that so understanding our business and kind of how it works, we encourage them to see and know everything. I think in order for our partners to be, and when I say our partners, I call artists that we work with our partners because we truly work in that way. But in order for us to be effective, they got to understand a lot about, you know, what is going on in our business and in our world to be helpful and be effective. So transparency is key for us.
And I think just over the years, you know, we've gotten lucky and just worked with a lot of smart artists who, you know, are gonna ask the questions, you know. So on our end, you know, I would tell day-to-day managers, like, hey, if you're going in the room with XYZ, make sure you know your shit, because like they're gonna ask all of the questions. So make sure that you know all of the answers before you go into that room. You know, so these aren't artists that are just gonna sign the contract, you know, without asking the questions or whatever. You know, these are artists that have built incredible careers, and I think what's helped them build those careers were the fact that, you know, they were asking all of the right questions. You know, so because I think like it's I don't think artists have to fall under. I think you could sort of have the sexiness of the business and also an incredible amount of insight at the same time. And like John Legend's a really good example of probably one of the smartest artists I've ever met. You know, ex Boston Consulting Group guy. You know, it's like super smart, but he doesn't. He balances it out well, where it's like he's gonna still be John Legend in front of the camera all day long, but at the same time, behind the scenes, he's making sure that everything is gonna be super buttoned up.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the public understanding of the music industry? Do you think we have a responsibility to try to change the narrative or make things clearer? I'm just thinking about, you know, because people don't fully understand the music business, we have, you know, sometimes things get out there. Like, I just think about that whole Taylor Swift thing where all of a sudden one day her entire fan base was like, yes, artists should own their own masters. And it's like, yes, that sounds awesome. And like, as a phrase, it's great. And we're like, yes, artists should own their own masters. But do they understand that that also means like, well, her parents could have come up with millions of dollars to put into her career? I mean, where was she supposed to get the capital? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's easy to say a slogan. It's hard to understand what's going on behind it.
So the way I look at it, right, and if we're talking about really fixing the business, when it's almost like the equivalent of most people who buy homes wouldn't be able to afford the home that they live in if it came to just paying cash. But the way the mortgage system was built is that over a 15 to 30 year period, eventually you can pay off your mortgage, and then you own your house outright essentially. So I definitely agree that if labels are making a big investment into the masters, of course they should own the masters. But with that being said, if you're Taylor Swift, and over that long period of time you've had that amount of success, you probably earned the right to earn back those masters over some period of time, because that's a windfall. That's, you know, so the investment was paid back. My guess is tens of thousands of times the investment. So I think there's that's the part where I don't feel like it needs to be one or the other. I do think there's ways, and there's already examples of other industries that have figured out transfer of ownership after you hit certain milestones, essentially, or even if it's co-ownership at some point. You know, there's ways to get there. There are ways to get there.
Yeah, I agree. But that's, you know, it's interesting, since we're sort of off on a tangent of how to fix the industry. I don't know that we started with that as the as the goal, but I like talking to you guys about it, I think. And, you know, I mean, Troy, you're a visionary. It's fabulous to talk to someone who thinks about these things, you know, because these are interesting and important things that we need to think about as an industry. Especially, you know, I think changing the narrative is really important. I started a podcast 6 years ago specifically with that in mind, because it's like, I was still hearing people say, well, why, music should be free because labels don't pay artists anyway. And I'm like, how is this narrative still with us? This is a very ridiculous and difficult thing to get over. So I feel like everything that's happened in the industry in the last several years, with the rise of artist empowerment, you guys are trying to work on that. And with artists understanding they need to own their own masters, like this is all part of changing the narrative in a positive way, I think.
Yeah, I think the point is that it's going to take, it's not going to be fixed. It's a problem that's not going to be fixed overnight, and that there are just many different versions of the problem in different corners of the house that we have to go and like fix the plumbing and fix the base and fix like the everything. And it's going to take, similar to solving problems like the pay gap for women and men, or like all different sorts of inequality issues. Like it's just going to take time and people continuing to spend every single day working on these issues and being vocal and public. And part of the reason why we came about and started to do these panels came out of this COVID-19 crisis and a team meeting, and our teammate Maria on a Zoom call with all of our 30 teammates, everyone expressing kind of their feelings and how they were adjusting. Still, it was March 11th or so, and our teammate Maria, who has been our wonderful moderator and facilitator for all 16 of our panels, raised her hand and said, I'm just really feeling on behalf of the entire music community, for the touring crews, for the bands, for the artists, for the managers, for the people who haven't like quite made it as far, had a lot of plans laid out, for people at labels. And, Troy raised his hand and said, I would be down to do a fireside chat, every day next week if it's necessary. And from there, over the weekend, Troy, Jay, Maria, and myself, cobbled together the initial MVP of the panel. And 16 panels later, we have just been really blessed to share these really honest and stark insights and learnings and conversations, and just checking in with our community and bringing artists to the table, producers to the table, people from film and TV to the panel, and being able to share those inside baseball stories alongside the 10,000 people who have chimed in over the last couple of months.
And Jay's been our star talent booker. Jay's full-time job has been booking talent. So Jimmy Kimmel, Ellen, whoever, if you're looking for a booker, call Jay Erving.
I don't know if he wants that job. Do you want that job full time?
It's not easy. It's been fun though. The one thing I would add, in just in terms of perception, is I was kind of listening to both Troy and Suzy's responses, and also kind of your take on perception. I think, one of the bigger issues is, more good guys good people being in, men and women being in positions of power, I think helps change the perception of the business. I think when you approach things with with fair and in mind, and you're able to, approach a Taylor Swift, scenario, or, situations that have had people look at the music business as kind of unfair. I think if the folks that are in power are approaching those things in a fair way, I think it helps change how artists feel, and it will eventually help change the perception. But I think the good guys got to be sitting in the right positions to help make those adjustments and make those changes.
Or outsiders going to come in, because if you look at the movie business and the television business, it was Netflix that came in and sort of flipped the model totally, and and it put the studios, who have been in power for almost 100 years, completely on their heels, because Netflix came in and just changed the entire model. So so that's the thing, if the industry doesn't adopt it ourselves, there will be somebody that's going to come along and look at this and says, hold on, none of this makes sense. You got a publishing side and the master side, you got this side, you got this, you got these rights, you got that right. Like, let's just blow this up and change the whole model. Somebody's gonna do it. Somebody's gonna do it.
Yeah, Portia, to your question earlier about like technology investing in early stage companies, like the $1 million deal investing in an early stage company, the fact that the construct of that deal would be buying equity into the company itself versus, $1 million in a record label deal, meaning that's an advance and a loan against your future royalties, where your masters are owned by the label and there's a split after you recoup those royalties, is unheard of in technology. And I think most entrepreneurs and venture capitalists would scream at like this old infrastructure. And so I think like even for me, I'm only 5 years into the industry and everything I've absorbed is through Troy and Jay and our team. Every day I'm like, wow, this something's got to change, and it will change. It's just going to take a while and take time for people to come in and understand and have like visionary ideas and put work in every day to accomplish those.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I feel like we had a weird thing happen in the music industry when tech sort of started getting excited about music industry a little bit over 10 years ago, where everybody just ran to us and they were like, oh, music's easy. We'll figure this out for you. You guys seem like you don't understand what's happening. You guys are really confused. So here, we're here to fix you. Like tech is here to fix you. And then they all like fell in a big pit, right? They were all just like, we're drowning. This makes no sense. So it's like, I feel like the last 5 years has seen so many more tech companies come online who actually took the time to understand all of our craziness and figure out how to truly solve problems that we really have, as opposed to, here, let me put a Band-Aid on something that I don't understand. So, I see it both ways, right? Because I think the problems need to be fixed, but I also think we have to have respect for the fact that we got here from the last 100 years of history. We're not just here from nowhere. We didn't just spring out of the earth yesterday. So the problems we have are the problems that we made for the last 100 years. So, it's exciting. Companies like yours are exciting because I feel like they provide like new solutions and new approaches to the same old things that we've been trying to do, which really is help artists be successful, right?
And Troy has great stories from back when he met the founder of Spotify, and when he was evaluating that space and saw piracy being eradicated in the Nordics. And of course Spotify came after, if you're recalling, like the Kazas, the LimeWires, the Napsters, and the Rhapsodies of the world, and how this divide between Hollywood and the music industry and Silicon Valley, and like just the walls being put up. Troy has an amazing phrase of like, what was it, like dinosaurs versus I don't know what it is, Troy, you can comment, but seeing Daniel and Spotify and the team kind of like negotiate and partner and build relationships and deep understanding of the industry so that they can accomplish the greater vision, and then see the global consumer demand arise from that. And then the model switches from CDs and downloads in iTunes store to streaming and singles. That's the type of like vision and thoughtfulness that's required, and intentionality. But at the same time, if we think about the enterprise side of music and how the business of music is powered, would argue that Spotify and these consumer platforms like TikTok and the social platforms that have enabled such ability for artists to engage deeply with their fans and have a direct relationship, the business side of the industry is where we haven't really seen a lot of technology, tools, innovation. And so I think like our team, like we're gonna do the work that is incredibly difficult, and not a lot of capital around ready for entrepreneurs to solve this challenge. But as insiders like Troy and Jay, with the insight, but with long-standing insight, but with also the novel, the perspective of like, we're not just the people who know everything. Like we're gonna take a tech-enabled approach and really build with multidisciplinary engineers and designers in-house. Like that's the future that we're trying to explore, powering the business of music.
Wow, that's really exciting. You guys want to get in on that?
This is why we just do what Suzy tells us to do. She got it covered.
Yeah, but to Suzy's point, like where, I think Daniel's a good example of somebody who took the right approach, like where everybody was stealing music before, so you sort of had the Napster approach, and then what I respected about Daniel from the very beginning, like he had the patience of Job to kind of sit with it's like sitting with the head of the four families, right? And it's like and going to kiss the ring at every point. But he built trust with the labels over the years of, okay, I'm going to take a year to actually get the licenses for this particular territory. I'm going to launch this particular product that, my vision is much bigger than what I'm able to show right now, but at least I got to build trust to actually show that I can actually make the pot much bigger than what it currently is, because technology is going to have a major impact on this industry, but yet people don't see it. So to actually, one, raise money around that after everybody got sued, and it's not a space that people were investing in. It just took a lot of patience and strategy to get that over the finish line.
Yeah, some days it's amazing we're here. I feel like we've had so many challenges in this industry. It's been pretty crazy, but it's also a ton of creative people. I love that about the music business. I feel like it's not just artists, it attracts creative people to all aspects. And, I was saying the other day that I think marketers are like superheroes. Marketers like make me feel really inadequate, because I feel like marketers are people who just think of, incredible ideas all the time that I would never come up with. So, I feel like we have a really cool group of people that we get to work with. I just wanted to ask you guys at the end here, the panels that you've had, these 16 panels have been so amazing. Were there any takeaways or sort of just like morals? The moral of the story is, what are you hearing from the community? What did everybody have to say, sort of encapsulated?
For me, it's like I think what we set out to accomplish in terms of pulling together folks in our community to do a general kind of health check almost, and also to start to create a network that is communicating during this time, and also will continue to communicate as we climb out of this. I feel like every panel that we've done, there's been a piece of business that's been created around it. Whether it's a reminder that that one of us needs to do, has an artist that, a producer could be helpful with, or, someone needs our help with something. I think there's been a piece of business that's come out of every panel that we've done, some kind of connection. But more importantly, I feel like we've also are understanding more clearly the power of communication. And if we're all communicating and talking to one another, how powerful we can be just by generally having information. And, I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. I think the other thing was people needed it, right? Like when, the unfortunate job of booking, of being the primary booker on this, there's folks that we were reaching out to. It was like we got, and a lot of this had to do with, Troy and Suzy's, reputations, kind of in our ongoing relationships, but we got 100% yeses from everybody that we reached out to do the panel. And, that spoke volumes. And, I just think that it was they felt like they needed it. They wanted to have the conversation. They wanted to talk. They wanted to see how other people were feeling. And
99.9%. Your dad said no because he was watching Netflix that day.
Yeah, he was watching Netflix that day. we missed one, but everybody else showed up for us. But it's been a lot of fun, and you know, platforms like yours and you guys can, you know, doing this is super helpful, because I think we all gotta just be talking and continuing to communicate during this time.
And it just, you know, it just showed like we're all in this together. Like I think that was like the biggest thing, where it just really, you know, because everybody kind of, you compete with each other, you know, on deals and all of these different things, and you got producers who are competing with each other and getting on projects, or like, so we kind of live in this world of like, it's a small community, but it's, you know, super competitive, right? This was just one of those moments where it's like, I just feel like everybody sort of was raw and stripped down. And, you know, we had to kind of wrestle with ourselves a bit, because we were going to do them sort of like every Tuesday and Thursday, you know, once we created the rhythm. But we just want we want each one to actually have meaning, and for it to feel special. And it's like almost putting a song on there's no album cuts. Like, you know, you don't want to just put a song on the album as a filler. We didn't want to waste people's time and like and just fill moments, as much as it is, can we bring together the right group with the right chemistry, and talk about things that we feel like are going to connect with the people that's listening, but also just that connection with each other as well. So like all of them have had their sort of own individual DNA and flavor to them. And it really stood out when we did the city edition, when we had different cities every week. And you could clearly see, you know, the difference between Miami, New York, LA, Atlanta, like just the cultural differences, but still each of them being like super special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Suzy, you want to get the last word on that?
Yeah, I think one takeaway for me is like, as the cities and countries start to open up again, as we've been doing these panels, you know, the question was asked, like, how do we adjust and readjust during this time? But what practices do we want to create or reinforce as we go back into the world where there's travel, the world where there's concerts, and how do we show up for ourselves, for our families, for our teams, for our artists, and what can we learn and take away from this time? And I'm the takeaway for me is like one of like immense gratitude for this time. Like, we're probably not going to see a time like this again in our lifetime, and the fact that, you know, Troy is able to hang out with his 6-year-old every day, or like Jay is able to go into our office by himself, but then also still be super connected to all of our artists and the managers and the producers and the team. Like, you know, what can we learn from this time that we can hold on to and take into the future? You know, whether it's a remote first and a flexible and remote office culture, or if it's, you know, producers and artists learning how to do everything themselves, and you know, bringing in their tools into their home if they didn't have them before. And
how
you know,
to remove nail polish from your 6-year-old.
this like this culture of just like, how can we be grateful for what we have today, even though we're all stuck at home and it's tough and it's mentally challenging? You know, how can we go forward better versions of ourselves and better authentic versions for each other and our communities? That's the takeaway for me. And then one thing, Portia, we did want to share, and Maria, I'll probably get a message from Maria in a minute if we didn't, but we've been talking about these 16 panels that we did. 15 were recorded. A lot of people have been asking, you know, we weren't able to log on, we weren't able to dial in, you know, how can we get access to those past panels, even for our inspiration, even if they're from a couple weeks ago. And we just wanted to take the time to announce here today that we decided to release every single panel that has been recorded every day at 4 o'clock on our YouTube channel, starting, I believe, today. And so we just wanted another place for the community to gather, both in the chat on YouTube as well as in our Slack community, to just kind of re-witness those moments. And I think I'm excited to go and watch them again, because they, like Troy said, were very raw. And
I want to watch YGs again.
I was just thinking of YG and LA, and the combination of Janae Aiko and YG around 5G and cell towers. But they were surprising, and it's we want to like build that kind of moment of community once again by doing them every single day at 4:00. But people can watch either at 4:00 together on their own time globally.
Fantastic. Well, you guys, it's been such an honor and a pleasure to talk to you today. I really appreciate you guys, and I like having all you three together. It's a good dynamic. So thank you so much for coming and being with us on Music Biz Live today. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you guys do too. So
thank you. Thank you,
Can't
Troy.
wait to be in Nashville with you next year.
I know. We can't wait either. Awesome. So everybody, thank you so much for watching, and come back tomorrow when I host the first ever joint keynote by Tom Corson and Aaron Bayshak, who are the co-heads of Warner Music. So same bat time, same bat channel tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.